Hello and welcome everyone to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where we've stitched together a pretty exciting lesson for everyone out here. The weather outside is frightful, but we've got all kinds of downtime with family and friends, so there's never been a better time to knit. And you've never had a better knitting instructor than Shayna Rose here, who's joining us to be your teacher. You know her from Vogue Knitting magazine. You know her from her partnerships with Joann Fabrics, Michaels, Yarnspirations, more she can tell you about, and from her interview with First Lady Michelle Obama about their shared love of knitting. And she is here to teach us how to become a knitter for the first time, how to become a better knitter, all those kind of things right here and now. Now, a couple of things before I turn it over to her. One, make sure you keep this interactive. So there's a chat box next to the right of the screen here. She's going to ask you a lot of questions and wants to hear your questions as well. This is kind of a group pastime here. I know a lot of you are knitting along with friends and relatives at home. And so let's keep it really collaborative. Also, make sure you've got a camera nearby, because in about 35 minutes, we want everybody to lean into the screen with your projects, take a selfie with Shayna. And if you upload that to Instagram, tag Shayna and Varsity Tutors. We'll have the official handles up on the screen. On the way out, you'll be entered to win a spot in a Varsity Tutors after school club. Also know this is being recorded. We've got about 45 minutes, but if it moves a little bit fast for you at times, come right back to this link, or if you want to start over at some point, or just make more projects here, you can always come right back to this link. So do your best to keep up, but if you do need to start over or anything like that, you can always come right back here, and Shayna will still be here to walk you through all of it. So with all that said, we hope you guys have a great time today. We all plan to. Let me introduce you to your teacher for today, Shayna Rose.
I'm so excited that we're all here to learn how to knit. It's going to be such a fun time, and I'm so excited to teach you. But before we get started with our lesson, I'd love to know, where's everyone knitting from? Let me know in the Q&A. Oh, I see some answers. They look awesome. I see some people knitting from East Coast, West Coast, Texas, Chicago, Canada. I'm in Massachusetts. I don't see any Massachusetts. I see some people in cold weather places, maybe where knitting is more important. I see people knitting with their families, which I love. Well, wherever you're knitting from and whoever you're knitting with, I'm so happy that we're all here knitting together today. So let's get started by looking at our project. We are knitting these adorable bunnies, and they are made from a square. So I have a bunch of different colors of them here. We have pink, another pink, teal, blue, and they are adorable. They have these little ears, they have little pom-pom tails, and then they're stuffed. They are just absolutely adorable, and they're made from a square. So that might sound a little bit confusing right now, but it's really great for beginners. And as we get knitting, I can't wait to show you how this cute little square, which goes over all the knitting basics and is perfect for beginners, will transform into our bunny. It's also awesome for the holidays, so that you can knit one in time for Christmas or any holiday to give to a family member or a friend, or even knit for yourself. I personally love knitting bunnies. I love donating them to local hospitals for newborn babies and to children and other charities. And they're just come to life so quickly. You can practice all the knitting skills that I'm going to show you today. And it makes for a perfect project to start right now, finish this week, or make more bunnies like I know I'm going to. As you said, this lesson is recorded, which is awesome. So you can come back to the same link, and I'll be here to show you how to make bunnies. So if you miss a step or you make a mistake, that's completely fine. You can't expect to master all of knitting in 45 minutes. I know that it took me a while to master it. So if it takes you a while too, or if I'm moving on too fast, you can always come back and you can master it yourself. So also, I'm going to be making conversation, asking some questions. But if you're in a groove with your needles and you don't want to take your hands off of your project to go to a keyboard, that is completely fine. So don't feel like you need to. So before we get started, I have a question. What color yarn is everyone using right now? Oh, I see some answers. I see all different pretty colors. I see lots of shades of red, some blues, greens, a few purples. I see some pink like mine. That is awesome. Well, whether you've knitted or whether you're knitting with a pink yarn or a purple yarn or any color yarn, I'm going to talk more about how I chose my yarn, and we'll have a great time talking about that. But right now, since we're talking about supplies and what color, I'm going to be talking about a commonly overlooked topic of knitting, which is how you choose supplies. Because I know when you walk into your local craft store and you see stuff for crochet, you see hooks, you see needles, you see numbers, and you don't know what the numbers are for. You see all these colors, big yarn, small yarn. So we're going to be talking about that. So first I'm going to talk about yarn sizes. So I have this yarn right here. It is a pretty thick yarn. This is a blanket yarn. So all yarn has a size on it. As you see with this one, there's a size 6. So that's because this is size 6 yarn. It says super bulky. The numbers grow through 1 through 7. So that's the yarn size, and it'll indicate how big the yarn is. 1 is really small, and it's good for baby projects like hats or baby, anything baby. Bigger yarn, like the blanket yarn that I just showed, this is pretty thick. So you'd use this for a blanket. There can be really thick size 7 yarn, which can be this big or something, and you can knit that with your hands. Then there's also needle size. Needle size, like yarn size, indicates how big the needles are. So this corresponds to gauge. Gauge is how big your stitches are. So if you use big needles and big yarn, you're going to have big stitches. Small needles, small yarn, small stitches. So the needle size, I have some big needles here. These are really, really big needles, really thick, really tall. So these are great for size 7 yarn because big needles, big yarn. So as you see, there's different sizes on it. The US size, which is what we're going to be looking at, is size 35. So size 35 is really big. Most knitters knit with size 7 through 10, 7 through 19, or 4 through 16. 4 if you're knitting baby things. It's really a varying scale. If you want to use size 4 needles, go for it. If you want to use size 20 needles or even size 35 needles, go for it. But it's important to use yarn that corresponds with it. So the next time you're in a craft store, if you want to knit just a bunny like this, then I recommend size 10 needles, which is what I'm using today. These are just good beginner needles. They're good medium size. And then I also recommend size 4 yarn. This is medium size yarn. It's right in the middle of 1 and 7, like I said, are the yarn sizes. So that's a good medium size yarn. So today I'm using size 4 yarn and I'm using size 10 needles. So for beginners, like I said, size 4 yarn and size 10 needles, and it's completely fine to fluctuate from that a little bit. So if you're here today and you don't know what size needles you have, or you don't know what size yarn you have, that's completely fine. You can still knit with it, learn these skills, and like I said, the lesson's recorded. So if you go out later and you get some size 4 yarn, get some size 10 needles, you can come back and you can knit with them. And it's also good if you want to use size 11 needles, size 9 needles. It's not too specific. So now we're going to learn how to make our first and most important stitch. This is where knitting gets started. So I'm super excited. This will be the first stitch on your needle. It's called a slip knot. So I'm going to hop over here to the bunny, and we are going to make a slip knot. So let's go over here, and we can learn how to make it. So over here, we are going to make a slip knot. Going to move these bunnies. They're going to hop off the screen, just like how we hopped over here. And we are going to take our yarn, and let's make this slip knot. So I'm going to take my needles out. The cool thing is we actually don't need needles to make a slip knot. So we're going to take a few inches of yarn, a pretty long amount, because this is important so that when we're casting on, which is the next step, we're going to need a long tail so that we're able to make more stitches. So it's always good to be safe than sorry and to have a longer tail rather than a shorter one. Because if you have a shorter one, you'll need to redo your slip knot. But if you have a long one and it's too long, you can always just snip it. So I'm just going to take, that's long story for just telling you why you need about 12 or so inches of yarn. So I'm going to use probably this much yarn. It's pretty long, but that's good. So I'm going to take a long amount of yarn, like I said, and this is going to be the yarn tail. The other side is going to be the yarn connected to the ball, which is also called the working yarn. So we're going to take this yarn, the 12 or so inches that we have, and what we're going to do is start the slip knot. So we're going to take the yarn connected to the ball and just wrap it over. So that's pretty simple. We're just taking it and we're putting it over. So I'll do that again. Take it and put it over. So then from there, we're taking our pinching fingers, our index finger and our thumb, and we are going to put them in between our hole, and we're just going to grab the yarn. See, if you see, this is just the little leg of the stitch, and we're just going to grab it. Then we're just going to pull it through while pulling this tail. So we're pulling the tail and we're pulling the hole, and we're going to pull it until it's nice and tight. And then you have a slip knot. So let's do that again. I'll undo mine. To undo it, all you do is pull both legs. So let's redo it. I'll do it on the table this time. Really, any method works. If you want to do it on a table or if you want to do it in your hands like I just did, either way is fine. So let's do it on the table right now. I'm taking the yarn, 12 or so inches, putting it on the table, taking the yarn, and just putting it over itself. So I'm just making a little what is this shape? Like a spiral type of thing. And then I'm taking my pinching fingers, index finger and thumb, putting it through, and I'm going to grab the yarn connected to the ball and pull. So I'm pulling this thing and I'm pulling the tail. So let's do that one more time, and then we're going to put that on our needle. So taking a good amount of yarn, make sure to take a generous amount. We are wrapping it over itself, taking our two fingers, putting it through, grabbing the yarn that's connected to the ball, and we are pulling on that and pulling the yarn tail. So we pulled it nice and tight, and now we're going to take our needle. So I have my needle here, and I'm just going to put it right through the stitch. Then I'm taking both tails, so the one that is a tail, and I'm taking the working yarn connected to the ball, and I'm just going to pull them both at the same time. It's okay if it slides off your needle, just push your needle right back and pull it. Don't pull it too tight. Don't grab at it because that'll be too tight, but don't pull it too loose because then it'll fall off your needle. Just have it so it's nice and snug. It can move up and down your needle nice and freely. So now we are going to hop like a bunny back over here, and we are going to get started on the next part of our knitting. Hi crafters, I'm back here. I hope that you had a great time making a slip knot. Congratulations on making your first stitch. That is a pretty big accomplishment. So now that we're back here, I'm going to ask a question before we get casting on, which is the next part. Casting on is how we make more stitches on our needle so that we can make our bunny. Since this bunny is just made from a square, there's no specific number of stitches that you need to cast on. If you're using a pattern, which are written instructions for knitting, then that'll usually tell you how many stitches you need to cast on. It'll say cast on 20, cast on 30. But since we're just knitting a square, it can be as many stitches as you like. If you want a big monster bunny, then cast on 50 stitches. If you want a tiny little baby bunny, then cast on 10 stitches. For this bunny is just a medium-sized bunny, I cast on about 25 stitches. But I think that today I'm going to cast on 10 and make a little baby bunny so that I can demonstrate. But before we get started casting on, I'm going to ask, who here has knitted before? And what have you knitted if you knitted before? I see some answers. I see some blankets, hats. I see some people saying that they love knitting. I see people excited to learn, which is awesome. I see some beginners too, which is really exciting since that's what we're here to do, learn how to do it. I see a lot, some blankets, hats, that's awesome. I've knitted a bunch of things. My favorite thing to knit, probably bunnies. But besides bunnies, probably slippers. Slippers are really fun. So we're gonna hop back over here now that I know who's knitted before, and we're going to learn how to cast on, make more stitches, so that is the second step in our, I almost said stitch, stitches in my mind. And that's the second step in our knitting journey. Let's go back over here, and we are going to cast on. Back over here. And let's learn how to cast on. Oh, I don't see the camera over here. Okay, so let's learn how to cast on. So to cast on, this is a really fun part of knitting. We are going to take the yarn tail, take our hand. So this is my left hand. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I don't remember my rights and lefts. I do the L thing. This is your left hand if you have a little L here. This is your right hand if there's no L. So I do that. But we're going to take our left hand, put it under the yarn tail. So this is the yarn not connected to the ball. Remember I said to leave it long? Well, this is why you needed to leave it long. So we're taking our hand, putting it under. Then we're going to make a thumbs up because this is a big thumbs up for knitting. We love knitting, big thumbs up. So now we're taking our needle, which is in our left hand, and we are wrapping it around the back of our thumb. So I'll do that again. We're making a big thumbs up around the yarn tail because we love knitting. And then we're going to wrap it around the back of our thumb. Then we're taking the needle, which is in our right hand, and we're going to put it in between the yarn and our thumb. So it's kind of like a yarn sandwich. We have the yarn or a yarn casserole, yarn tortilla, because the yarn is like the bread. It's wrapping around all the good insides. And then we have our needle inside and our thumb. So now we're taking the other part of the yarn connected to the ball, the working yarn, And we're going to put that in between the yarn and our thumb. So I'll do that again from overhead. So as you see, I'm just putting it in between the yarn and my thumb. It's kind of like the sauce in between your yarn sandwich. Stitch sandwich. That is a nice ring to it. So then we're taking our thumb and we're just going to move it over the top of our needle. Take your thumb out, pull the yarn. So now we have 2 stitches. So congratulations, knitters. You have your second stitch on your needle. You should be very proud. So we're going to do that again. This is like the stitch sandwich station. Stitch sandwich station. Very nice ring to it. We're going to make another stitch. So take the yarn that's not connected to the ball. Make a big thumbs up for knitting around it because we love knitting. Take the needle, wrap it around the back of your thumb. Take the needle in your right hand and put it in between the yarn and your thumb. Then take the yarn connected to the ball, the working yarn, and put it in between the yarn and your thumb, like the sauce in your stitch sandwich. Then move your thumb over the top of the needle. Take your thumb out and pull. Now we have 3 stitches. If anyone has any specific questions about that, you can let me know in the Q&A if you're confused on anything. I'll do it one more time, and then I'm just going to cast on the rest of my stitches pretty fast. So we're going to make another stitch sandwich because we have a lot of hungry customers. They all really want to eat a stitch sandwich. It's really delicious, but don't eat yarn. So we're taking our hand, our left hand, and we are going to make a thumbs up because we love knitting. Wrap the yarn around the back of your thumb. Take the needle, put it in between the yarn and your thumb, make that sandwich. Then take the yarn that's connected to the ball, the working yarn, put it in between the needle and your thumb, move your thumb over the top, take your thumb out and pull the yarn. Nice job, crafters. If you learned how to cast on, you should be very proud. So I'm just going to cast on the rest of my stitches. I'm going to cast on probably 10 stitches just because I want a somewhat small bunny. So if you're still confused on knitting, I know I'm going a little bit faster, but you can still follow me and learn how to cast on if you're still a little bit confused. And just remember, this class is recorded. So if you still don't understand this part of knitting casting on, which is completely fine, because I didn't understand it for a good 30 minutes or so when I started. So if you still don't understand, you can come back to it. Knitting is a lot of math. You got to count a lot of stitches and stuff. So I'm going to count my stitches right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. I'll demonstrate the last one. But now you see why we needed a long tail, because it gets eaten up. It goes pretty quick. And we need this so that we can cast on. So let's cast on our last stitch. We are taking the yarn tail, making a thumbs up because we love knitting, wrapping it around the back of our thumb, taking the needle, putting it in between the yarn and our thumb, taking the yarn connected to the ball, putting it in between, and then we're going to move the yarn on our thumb over the needle and pull on that yarn. Okay, so there we go. Now I have 10 stitches on. If you're still casting on, that's fine. So we can wait a little bit here. I'll probably cast on another stitch or so, just so that you can keep working on your cast on. So I'm just doing another stitch here. Now I'm just going to take that stitch off. So now that you should have 10 or so stitches, if you have 5 or something and you're just looking to make a nice little rectangle, that's fine too. But if you don't want to knit a bunny with it, that's fine. Or if you just want to come back, like I said, the lesson's recorded. So you can come back, learn these skills now, then make the bunny later, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to hop. That pun will not get old. I'm going to hop like my bunny back over here. So everyone, I'm curious, how's everyone feeling about, see a thing on my screen? How's everyone feeling about knitting? Are you feeling good about your cast on? Are you feeling not too good about it? Let me know how you're feeling about it. I see some answers, see some relaxed, see some fun. That's good. See some getting the hang of it, a little frustrated. Yeah, it can be a little bit frustrating. I see some that they just tried it, that they like it. So that's awesome. See some people learning to laugh at themselves, which is really important. So that's awesome. So obviously there's no wrong answer there. If you're feeling good about your cast on, that's good. If you're not feeling good, that's also fine. So now we are going to learn the knit stitch. The knit stitch is a really cool part of knitting. It's really important. So the knit stitch is how we're going to make the base of our bunny. The knit stitch, if you knit every stitch in every row, that makes what's called the garter stitch. And the garter stitch, as you see here, or on my square, which I have right here, the garter stitch creates this bumpy type of cool, stretchable little swatch. So it's this cool thing. It's not your typical V thing that you see in knitting. I know in knitting you see V's that go in rows. That uses another stitch called the purl stitch. But right now we're just learning the knit stitch, which is an awesome stitch. My favorite stitch. We love the knit stitch. Thumbs up for it, like the cast on. So if you knit every stitch in every row, then you'll have the garter stitch. And that's what our amazing bunny is made out of, the base of it. So we are going to go back over here in a minute and we are going to learn how to do the knit stitch. So we're going to hop back over. So I'm over here now and let's learn how to do the knit stitch. So I'm going to take both needles. This is a big milestone, crafters. We are using 2 needles. Before we were just using 1. So the knit stitch is somewhat of a learning curve. It's definitely a learning curve. So I have a good pun to start us off. To understand knitting, you need to know the nitty gritty. Did you like the pun? It was a pretty good pun, I think. When I first told my brother, he did a big face palm to it, but I think it's an awesome pun. So let's do the knit stitch. We have our casted on stitches in our left hand, and we have our empty needle in the right hand. So left hand casted on, right hand empty. So taking the right hand empty needle, we are going to insert it into the first leg. As you see in each stitch, there's 2 different legs of the stitch. There's the first leg right here. Then there's the second leg right here. So we're going to insert it into the first leg. So I'll do that again. So as you see right here, we're just inserting it right there. So now we're going to take the yarn connected to the ball, not the yarn that's the yarn tail, the yarn connected to the ball. And we're going to put it in between the 2 needles. So I'll do that again. The yarn is connected to the ball. We are wrapping it in between both needles. Now we're going to take the right hand needle, which is empty. We're going to move it down. And so you see the yarn that we put in between the 2 needles, this yarn, that's what we're going to catch. So we are going to move our needle down and we're just going to catch that on our needle, on our right needle. Then we're going to take the stitch on our left needle and we're going to just flick it off the top. Then I'm just going to pull this yarn a little bit. And there you go, you knitted your first stitch. If you did it on your first try, you should be very proud. If you still didn't do it yet, that is fine too, because we're going to go over it a few times. So taking the right hand needle, we're inserting it into the first leg of the next stitch. Then we're taking the yarn connected to the ball, the working yarn, and we are going to wrap that in between both needles. Then we are going to take the empty right hand needle, move it down, and catch that yarn. So there you go. Then we're going to flick it off the top. And there you go. Now you knitted 2 stitches. So let's do that one more time. Taking the right hand needle, insert it into the first leg of that stitch. So let's show that again. So as you see, there's 2 legs, leg 1, leg 2. So we're going to insert it into the first leg right here. So now you have kind of like a stick sandwich, not a stitch, but stick, because the knitting needles are sticks. So we have a stick sandwich here. We have the yarn holding them together and 2 needles inside 1 stitch. So now we're taking the yarn that's connected to the ball, wrap it in between the 2 needles. So overhead, you see I'm just wrapping it in between. Then I'm moving this needle, the right hand needle, down. And I'm going to catch that yarn that we wrapped in between. So that yarn, I know when I was a beginner, I didn't know what yarn we were catching. The yarn that we wrapped in between is the yarn that should go on our needle. And then we're just going to flick the stitch off the top of our left needle. Let's just do that one more time. So taking the right hand needle, put it in between the first leg, take the yarn connected to the ball, put it in between both needles, move the right hand needle down, catch the yarn, and flick the stitch off the top of the needle. So I'm going to do that at a little bit of a faster pace down the rest of the row. So you can still look up and watch me since I'll still be doing the same steps. Catch the yarn, push the stitch off the left needle, insert the needle, put it in between, catch the yarn, push the stitch off the needle. So I'm going to do that down my row. 3 more stitches. Okay, let's do that. 2 more stitches. Wrap the yarn, push the needle down, catch it. Okay, last stitch. For the last stitch, I'll demonstrate again. So take your right hand needle, put it in between the stitch. This is a good stitch to see the 2 legs. So as you see, there's 2 legs right here, leg 1 and leg 2. So we're just going to insert the needle into the first leg. Take the yarn, connect it to the ball, wrap it in between. Take this needle, the right hand needle, move it down, and we are going to catch the yarn. And then we're just going to move the stitch off our needle. So there we go. Now you knitted a whole row. Congratulations, crafters. You should be very, very proud. That is a big accomplishment. So now we're going to change rows, go on to our second row. So I know when I was a beginner knitter, I didn't know how you do that. Do you take this needle and do you like knit backwards or something? Well, crafters, here's some good knowledge. You do not knit backwards. What you're going to do, take your hands off of the needles, hands away from the project. Then take your left hand, which we learned, use the L trick. Whichever hand makes the L is your left hand. So take your left hand and you're going to take the yarn with the stitches and put it in your left hand and hold it like you had a knit needle. Take the right hand, hold the empty needle. Now you're holding your needles good. So now we can just knit it just like we did the first row. So we're just going to knit completely normally. So I'm just going down the row again. Let's do another knit stitch. So as you see, there's 2 legs. Insert your right hand needle into the first leg. Take the yarn connected to the ball, put it in between the 2 needles, move the needle down, and catch that yarn. Then just flick the stitch off the top of your needle. So I'm just going to do that down my row, and we're just going to keep working on that. So I'm just going to do more stitches like this. And then once I get to the end of this row, I am just going to switch rows again. So if you're still struggling with this, just remember the class is recorded again, and you can always just look up from your work and you can see me doing it. Now you should be proud. We already have a good row forming here. This is a pretty big accomplishment. It looks awesome. Okay, so we're going to switch. So remember, to switch rows, drop both needles, take your left hand, grab the yarn with the stitch, grab the needle with the stitches, take your right hand, grab the empty needle, and then we can start knitting. If you're still struggling with the knit stitch, because I know it definitely can be difficult, then this class, just remember, this class is recorded. You can just go back to this exact same link and you will find me again, showing you all of these instructions all over again. And then you can just keep repeating them as many times as you want. And there is nothing wrong with repeating it a million times because it's difficult. When I interviewed Mrs. Obama, who's also a new knitter, she said that she struggled with the knit stitch, and she said her biggest advice in knitting is to not give up and to be determined. And that really is great life advice too. Just like in life, if you have a hard math test and you don't know how to do the math, you are just going to keep trying, right? You wouldn't give up on that. And so just like with that, with knitting, don't give up on it. You can do it. So it's really important to know that you can do it. And you are among some very talented knitters like Mrs. Obama. And her biggest advice, like I said, just don't give up and be determined with knitting, because it's sometimes you will want to give up. It will be difficult. Just like how right now, if you're struggling with the knit stitch and you're a little frustrated, you just want to throw your needles out a window. Just know that you can do it. Just keep trying. It took me about a good day to learn how to do the knit stitch, but I did do it. And here I am teaching you all how to knit. So you can do it too. So we are just going to keep going, and we're going to do a bunch of rows for this. So as you see, this is turning out awesome. You should be so proud. We have a good bunch of rows here. We can already see our thing forming, and that's really rewarding. That'll keep you going. So if you ever get to frustrated by this, just look at your work and see, wow, I did that. Or even if you didn't knit a stitch yet, wow, I was able to cast on. That's an accomplishment. So we're going to do more rows here. Let's keep going. So we are on our 4th row or something now. That's pretty good. So I'm going to keep going here. Another cool type of yarn is loop yarn. Loop yarn is this yarn that has it already has the loops made on it. So instead of like with knitting here with needles, we are making the loops, except with loop yarn, the loops are already made and you take your fingers and you use your fingers to make the yarn go through the loops and pull them through and make your cool knitted thing. So loop yarn is actually how I learned how to knit because it got me interested in it. I love knitting with my fingers. So then I thought, let's knit with needles. And that's how I learned how to knit with needles. But with loop yarn, I was on Barbie's You Can Be Anything series, which is an awesome series on YouTube for kids. So if you want to check that out on the Barbie YouTube channel, you can. And you can learn how to use loop yarn too. So if you love knitting with needles here and you want to learn loop yarn, you can learn that. Or if you're feeling a little bit discouraged with knitting with needles, you can hop on over there, see loop yarn, then come back to this and knit a bunch of bunnies, of course, because bunnies are such a cute project for the holidays. Knit them as gifts, knit them for yourself, knit them for charity, really for anything. So this is turning out super awesome. You should be super proud of this. We're going to swap rows again. For this row, I'll show how to do the knit stitch in case anyone is still struggling. So let's show that one more time. Taking the needle in our right hand, put it into the first leg, take the yarn connected to the ball, the working yarn, wrap it in between both needles, move the right hand needle down, catch that yarn, then flick the stitch off. So after working this row, I'm going to show you all how to knit the bunny or how to sew it up so that we can turn this square into this bunny, which is the part you've all been waiting for. I'm like a magician showing you all how to do this very cool magic trick of how to turn a square into a bunny. Oh, it's actually kind of like a chef. You take all these ingredients like stuffing and yarn and needles and you make a bunny. So back to our sandwich analogy about how we're making a stitch sandwich. Well, we're making a stitch bunny. Maybe I'm just really hungry and that's why I keep making all these food analogies. Food is really yummy. So we have that row. I'm going to do, I think, one more row or something, just in case anyone still wants to look up and see how to do the knit stitch because it is confusing. One of the people that I interviewed, I did a lot of cool interviews with people you can check out on my social media, which will be on the screen at the end. I did a bunch of cool interviews and a lot of the celebrities that I interviewed actually knit, which is pretty cool. One of the celebrities I interviewed, Julie Andrews, I interviewed her in New York, which was really cool. I saw some people are knitting from there. I interviewed her in New York for Despicable Me 3, which is a super awesome movie. Gru, the Minions, love them all. I bet one of those Minions knits. They probably knit a Minion hat or maybe a pair of overalls. That would be a cool knitting pattern. But I interviewed Julie Andrews for Despicable Me 3, and she loves knitting. She loves gardening. So it was really cool to talk to her about it. So now that we have all these rows, I'm going to hop back over here for 1 second, and then we can get started on our bunny. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be back here. So before we get started knitting our bunny, I need to ask what everyone's favorite craft is besides knitting, of course. I know that's your new favorite craft. So let me know your favorite crafts. Ooh, I see some good ones. I love all of them. Painting, drawing, love drawing, crochet. Crochet is so fun. I see some knitting. I see some people asking if baking counts. Of course baking does. And so does cooking because we are kind of cooking here, as I've said. So these are turning out awesome. See a lot of awesome crafts. That's awesome. I gotta try a few of those crafts. I know that knitting is your new favorite craft because we're all having a great time here making these bunnies. So now, like I said, I'm gonna be a magician and I'm gonna show you how to take your square. I already knitted a square. If you're still knitting your square, that is fine because like I said, the lesson is recorded. So you can go back to this exact link or you can go to the Varsity Tutors YouTube channel and you can see how to knit this bunny. So if you're still knitting your square, like mine, I'm only done with a few rows. So if you're still knitting your square, making it long, tall, or if you're making a massive bunny. So if you're still knitting your bunny, that's fine. Just come back to the same link and you can rewatch this part where I will show you how to actually sew up the bunny. So to sew up this bunny, we're taking our square, and then we're going to take what's called a knitting needle, also called a tapestry needle, but it's not a knitting needle like this. Mine's over there, but I'll show it in a second. And it's basically just a sewing needle, but bigger, so that we can put yarn in it. So if you want to use a sewing needle too and just use some thread, that's fine. Thumbs up for knitting like our cast on. But if you want to use a tapestry needle too, that's awesome. You can find them at your local craft store. Then we're also going to be just using some more of our yarn. And then we're using some stuffing so we can have a nice little chunky bunny. So I'm going to hop like a bunny. I will keep using it. I'm going to hop back over here, and we are going to use our tapestry needle and our stuffing to sew up our bunny. So let's go back over here. So I am going to take my awesome square that I'm knitting out of the way. So I'm just going to wrap that up, put it over here, and I am going to just cut that yarn so that I have this yarn for my bunny. So this is a tapestry needle that I was talking about. Mine's blue, they come in silver, all different colors, and you're just going to use it to make your bunny. So it has a big eye here. So as you can see, it'll fit yarn. So that's pretty cool. It's basically just a big sewing needle. So we're going to be using that and some stuffing. This stuffing is very festive. It's like snow. And I know in some places where people said they're knitting from, there probably is snow. There's no snow here. Here it's cold, but no snow. I love snow. Sledding is really fun, so is skating. If you want to let me know in the Q&A your favorite snow activity, favorite winter sport, that would be pretty cool. So we're going to be using stuffing and a tapestry needle and, of course, scissors and yarn and our square. So let's get started on this. We are going to be taking a good few inches of yarn. It's always better to use more than enough. So I'm going to take about this much. Just going to snip right there. Ooh, I see a lot of awesome answers for people's favorite winter sports. I see skiing, sledding, snowball fight, of course, snow angels, snowboarding, snowmen. That is awesome. Love all of those. Well, you can use stuffing and throw it at your sibling and call it a snowball fight. I know I will probably just throw this at my brother and tell him it's a snowball. But we are going to take our yarn that we cut, and we're going to put that through our little tapestry needle. So I'm just going to take the yarn. I'm just going to twist it. That makes it smaller. Then just put it through. And I like to tie it. You don't have to tie it. That just makes it more secure. Just tying a little knot. So now this is the cool part. So we have our square. I'm going to take my tapestry needle. I'm going to turn it this way. And I'm going to make a triangle here. So if you can just envision a triangle, that's what we're going to make. We're just going to stitch that. So I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to go from the side. I'm just going to put the needle right through. This is how you seam things together. And we're just going to pull it. So leave a nice little yarn tail. We're going to use that. So now we're just going to make a straight line across. So I'm just going to take my tapestry needle, push it through, pull it. And we're going to go all the way down that row. So let's do a few more. And I am going to go all the way down my row here. So I just like to go in between the stitches, as you see. And then I pull it, and I still have my yarn tail here. And it's awesome because it's practically invisible. So you can't even tell that I made stitches here. So that's awesome. So when your bunny's finished, you won't see any weird little sewing lines or anything. You just see a nice bunny. So I'm just going to keep going down my row. As I said earlier, I love donating these bunnies to charities. It's really awesome. But a really cool charity that I worked with for knitting, I was on Lion Brand Yarn, which is the yarn I'm using right now. I was on their Facebook show, which is called The She Show, with one of their, with their host, Shira. And she actually runs a very cool knitting charity, very cool knitting campaign called Hat Not Hate, where people knit up a bunch of blue hats and they donate them to Hat Not Hate, and then they're distributed to schools against bullying. So that's really cool how knitting not only brings people joy and relaxation, but it brings people together through this cause to make a bunch of hats. And then it brings more people together because the people who wear the hats. So that is a very cool thing that I got to be part of. I'm just going to snip this little tail. I don't need that. Get the pun tail like a bunny tail. That was one that I made up on the fly. The puns are just flying to me. So now that we made our line across, we are going to make the triangle side, the one that goes up to the top. So we are just going to stitch from where we are up to the middle of the top. So I'm going to take my needle and we're just going to make a little diagonal line. So I'm pulling right through. And I'm just going to keep going through the stitches. Now I'm at the middle, as you see. So I'm just going to pull it through. Now we're going to do the same thing, but going down back to our starting point so that we finish up our triangle. So we are going to take it, put the needle through, pull. We are almost there. And now I'm going through that the stitch that I started at. I'm just going to go through that, pull through. Okay, so now as you see, we stitched a triangle. You can't really tell, but it is there, a triangle. So now is where our snow comes in. Ooh, that looks cool. So now is where our snow comes in. We are going to take a little ball of stuffing, pretty small, probably around this big. Just it can, like baseball size, can fit in your palm. We're going to put it right in the middle of our triangle. So I'm not putting it down here or at the side of the triangle. I'm putting it right in the middle. And I'm just going to hold it there. And I'm going to pull. As you see, we have our starting tail and we have our ending tail. So I'm going to pull both of them. You can alternate pulling, pull at the same time, whatever you want to do. All while, and then I'm just going to push this in. So I'm just going to push it in and I'm going to pull. Push the stuffing in. And as you see, it's starting to make a little ears. You can see these cute 2 little ears. So just keep pushing it in. These are adorable. And if you want to add more stuffing too, I think I'm going to add a little bit more. Just push it in to your bunny. And then keep pulling your 2 yarn tails. And there we go. If you have any extra stuffing, we can just take it out. This looks awesome. We have our 2 ears. And once we do the back, it'll look more like a bunny from the front. But as you see from the back, that is looking pretty bunny. It's looking like the one that I already knitted. So now we are going to, if you want, you can make it a little bit more secure just by stitching right from here through here. I'm not going to do that because I like how my bunny's looking. So we are going to just take our 2 strands. We have strand 1 connected to the tapestry needle, strand 2, and we're just going to tie them together. So I'm just making a knot and pulling. And I'm going to double knot that just to make it super secure. And now we can just cut. Taking my scissors, and I'm just going to snip. So I'm just going to take the yarn off my little tapestry needle. And we are going to get some more yarn for stitching. So I am taking my yarn from the ball, and I'm just going to cut a good amount. I'll just cut this long. And I'm going to connect that to my tapestry needle so we can twist, like I said. That's a helpful little tip to make it smaller and go through the needle. And then I'm just going to tie it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew from here to here. So we just want to connect that. So starting right here, I'm just going to sew. What I like to do is I like to take the beginning of my yarn and tie it with the other leg, the leg connected to the tapestry needle. So I'm just going to tie them, double knot it. That just makes it really secure, a double knot. You can triple knot. Then I'm just going to cut that little strand. Let's cut it. Cut. There we go. Then I'm going to take my tapestry needle and we are just going to sew all the way down. If you love sewing, I know I love sewing. One of the cool things that I got to do is I was part of Singer, which is a cool sewing, very cool sewing machine. And I was part of their 170th anniversary. That is really old. I doubt any of you are 170. That is a very, very, very long time. So that was a very cool thing that I got to do. Because I saw some of you said you like sewing when I asked what type of crafts you like. Okay, we are almost at the end of our row. Just one more stitch. That we are going to go through. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to take more stuffing, more of our amazing snow, and we are going to take a big handful because it'll squish down. So we're going to take a good handful and we're just going to put it in our bunny, stuff the bunny. So as you see, I'm just stuffing the bunny. Okay, stuff it however big you want. And as you see, it's really coming together, our bunny. It is looking adorable. And if you want, at the end, you can sew 2 little eyes or a nose, or you can make a little knitted carrot to go with it. Anything that you want to do. So I'm going to take a little bit more stuffing, stuff it. If you don't want your bunny too stuffed, that's fine. I like mine pretty stuffed. This is looking adorable, like it could just hop off, like it could hop away, like I've been saying that pun this whole time. So we're going to take our tapestry needle and we are just going to close that opening. This is actually our cast on line, if you remember. So we have a very cool braided cast on because that's what we made. And you all mastered the cast on, so you should be very proud. And if you didn't master the cast on, that's okay too, because this lesson is recorded and you can still master the cast on. This bunny too, you can make a pom-pom tail like I did for my bunnies. I can't show that pom-pom today because we don't have enough time, except a pom-pom is super easy to make. All that you do is you take a fork from a kitchen or something, and you're just going to take yarn, wrap the yarn around it, around 50 times or something, tie a knot around the yarn, take it off the fork, and just cut through those little yarns, all the yarn that you wrapped around. You're just going to cut through it, and then just trim it to your pom-pom desired. If you want it super messy or you want it super trimmed, give it a nice haircut. And then you're just going to use your tapestry needle to attach it to your bunny. Okay, we are almost done sewing here. Sometimes the needle can get a little stuck. Oh, okay. Or it can rip off the tapestry needle, but it's okay because we can just put it right back on. So I'm just going to tie it, put it through my tapestry needle, make another knot. For anyone who's still working on their bunny, the rose with the knitting, that is so awesome. I hope that it's turning out awesome. You can switch colors too halfway through. All that you need to do for that is take a new ball of yarn, cut the old one, and then just start knitting with the new one. Super simple. So if you want to try that, you can have a half purple, half blue bunny, whatever you want to do. So this bunny, if you want, you can, if you don't like that flat edge, what you can do is take the tapestry needle, put it through the top, and that'll just make it so that little point is gone. And then there's a little point right here. I don't really like the points. So what I'm going to do is take my needle and just put it back through. So it's going through the bunny to the bottom. And I'm just going to pull it through. There we go. And now it's a nice little round back of the bunny. So right now is when I would sew my tail on. I just go back through here, then just put the needle through the tail. And then I put it back, secure it a few times. But since we don't need to do that, we can just snip our yarn. And we have made a bunny. Congratulations, crafters. This is what you all have been waiting for this whole time. So hooray for you. You should be so proud. And, you know, in honor of your bunny that you made, your adorable baby bunny, in honor of your bunny, I'm going to say a great knitting pun, but I can't because I ran out of material. Get it? Because material like yarn. That was a pretty good pun. That was really good. So we finished our bunny. So congratulations, crafters. You should be very proud. I'm going to hop with my new bunny over here. And we finished our bunny. So crafters, thank you all so much for joining me to learn how to knit an amazing bunny. It is adorable, turned out awesome. I hope that you had a great time. I know that I had a great time. Remember, you can always come back here and you can learn how to knit more bunnies. So thank you so much for learning how to make them with me. I'll hand it back to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Shayna, for teaching us an amazing project, for all the instructions, and for your knitting puns, which had us all in stitches the entire time. So we were having a great time out there. So thanks so much. Thanks to all of you out there for some amazing questions, for taking the time to work on this project with us. And a lot of you are doing really well. Some are going to go back and watch that recording. I decided partway through, I'm just leaning on the recording. I had too many other things to do to be frustrated with all of you, maybe, bleeding from a needle poke or something like that. But however far you made it, we want to give you guys an opportunity. Two quick things here before we're done. One, we want everybody to lean into the screen, take a picture with your project if it's ready to go, or just with Shayna herself, and put up some bunny ears and some needle and yarn and everything. So get your cameras ready. Reminder, if you put these up on Instagram, tag Shayna and tag Varsity Tutors. You'll be entered to win a spot in an after school club with Varsity Tutors. We got all kinds of amazing things to learn. If you loved learning here today, there's plenty more where that came from. So Shayna, we're going to go back full screen to you and make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to take those selfies. So let's go back full screen and everybody get those pictures.
Let's do bunny ears. Let's hold up some bunnies. Other colors, the bunny I made.
Awesome. Hopefully everybody got great pictures, and we do want to get to some of your questions. We'll put Shayna back full screen when she's answering those. If you haven't got quite the perfect picture yet, you'll have plenty more opportunities. But a few minutes here, Shayna, people have been asking some great questions. One, so reminder everybody, this was recorded. If you're partway through the project, want to come back later, this very link, this live stream will turn into a recording as soon as we're done. So hang tight or come back and you'll be able to finish up. One that quite a few people asked here was, we talked a lot about casting on to start the project. When we're done, what do we need to know about casting off? Even if that's a thing, what do we need to know about to finish up once we're done?
That's an awesome question. I can show you right here if you want to go back to the knit cam. I can show how to cast off if the knit camera is on.
Perfect. Yeah, you have to turn that one back on.
There we are.
There you go.
So we have our knitting over here. Oh, if we want to switch to the knit cam. Okay. So now that we're on, knit cam, here we go. So we have our knitting, our little swatch. So to cast off, that's an awesome question. We are taking our yarn. I cut my yarn, but that's fine. I'm just going to keep it. And what we're going to do is knit the first stitch. So I'm just going to take my yarn and knit it. So what we're doing is we're just going to knit that first stitch. Then we're going to knit the next stitch. See, even if you cut your yarn, it's fine because you can just use a new strand of yarn and do the exact same thing. So I knitted my first stitch. Now I'm just going to knit my second stitch. So now I have 2 stitches on my right hand needle. Then I'm going to take my left needle, put it into the first leg. Remember how there's 2 legs? We went over that in the cast on or during a knit stitch. So take our left needle, put it through the first leg of the previous stitch. And then we're just going to, keeping that second stitch on your right needle, put it over. So let's do that again. And then we have a casted off stitch. I'm just going to pull mine so it's tight. So let's do that again. We already have 1 stitch that we knitted on our right needle. So we're going to knit another stitch on the left needle. So now I have 2 knitted stitches on my right hand needle. So I'm going to take the left needle, put it into the first leg of that first stitch. And then we're just going to move them up the needle keep that stitch on the needle. If your finger helps, that's fine. And just keep it on. And then we just take that second stitch, the stitch that we had here, and we're going to move that over at the needle. Let's do that one more time. Knit this stitch. Take the left needle, put it through the first leg, and we're just going to carry that over the other stitch. I'll just do that one more time. Knit the stitch, put the needle in the first leg, and carry it over. So there you go, crafters. And then as you see, you have a nice braided cast off. So that's how you cast off.
Awesome. Thank you for that, for answering that question. Hopefully everybody got that answer there. And again, if you're not done with your project just yet, that's okay too, because this is being recorded. So that piece is there for you when you're ready for it yet again. So I'll be there. Hey, a lot of other questions. Just people wanted to know about how you started knitting. So what got you started? Like, how did you decide to pick it up? What was the most challenging thing for you when you got started? And how long have you been at it?
Yeah, so we all talked about those amazing crafts that we all love. Baking, drawing, painting. I always loved crafting. Still love crafting, of course. And so, my screen. So I always loved crafting. So one day I decided, just randomly, I want to learn how to knit. So my grandmother, she got me what's called a hobby nobby, or what she calls a hobby nobby. And it's just this little wooden stick with some pegs in it. And you use it to make just this knitted type of tail thing. It was very cool. She actually had one when she was younger. Her brother actually made it for her out of wood and some nails. So that is pretty cool. So she got me one from our local craft store. And I just started making these cool little braids. And it was really fun to make, and I loved it. So then, as I mentioned about loop yarn, I said I did a video with Barbie teaching how to use loop yarn. After I did the hobby nobby, I learned how to use loop yarn. So it's just these loops, and you put them through each other, and it's really cool. So I learned how to use loop yarn, and I loved loop yarn. I loved loop yarn, loved the hobby nobby. So I decided I'm going to learn how to knit with needles. So I grabbed some needles, grabbed some yarn, I went on YouTube, and I learned how to knit, because my grandmother crochets, but she doesn't knit. So I learned from YouTube. I'm a self-taught knitter, and I learned how to do it. So I'm excited to share that with you all, since learning knitting virtually can be challenging sometimes, but you can do it. And once you just get at it and you keep going, you will be able to do it, and you'll love it. So I've been knitting for 3 years now, I think, since I was 12. So 3 years, a pretty good amount of time. And I've knitted a lot of stuff in that time, knitted a bunch of bunnies, knitted a bunch of blankets, hats, and it's been a great journey.
Thank you. And during that time, we got time for one more. A lot of people wanted to know, okay, this is a great starter project, and people are working their way through it. You've been at it for about 3 years. What's the hardest project you've completed? How long did it take you to work up to it? And what made it so challenging, but what made it rewarding?
That is a really good question. Well, a really cool resource that you can use to find knitting patterns is this website called Ravelry. Mrs. Obama and I talked about Ravelry in our interview. She said how she uses it to find inspiration. It is some super inspiring and cool patterns, like I mentioned, which are just written instructions for projects. So you can use that website to find a bunch of cool projects and patterns, and just join a really cool knitting community. So the hardest thing that I've knitted, well, it's probably blankets. Blankets can be pretty challenging because you need to knit long, it takes a long time. So I've gotten better at knitting blankets. I knitted a cable knit blanket, which is a really cool skill where you use a third needle. That might sound mind-blowing, a third needle, but you use a third needle so that you can make cables, which is really cool. So that's really helpful for sweaters or for blankets. I made a blanket with one, and they're really fun. Something that I really want to knit is a Taylor Swift cardigan. I love Taylor Swift, and she has these cardigans that people knit or crochet. They use cables, they take a long time, but I'm gonna be dedicated to it, and I'm gonna make one.
I'm pretty confident that if you set your mind to it, you will definitely make one. And again, following Mrs. Obama's advice,
Definitely.
And persevere. So, hey, thank you so much. Thanks all of you out there for sharing your time and part of the holidays with us, for sharing your projects with them. Reminder, on the way out, we'll have those official handles up there so you can get your pictures up on Instagram. If you want to wait until your bunny is ready, feel free. You can put a picture of that up there as well. Tag Shayna Rose and Varsity Tutors. You'll be entered to win a spot in an after school club. Should also mention, well, the date is still to be announced, but Shayna's going to be back. If you had fun learning how to knit today, you'll have plenty of fun learning how to interview a little bit later in the spring. Shayna, you're coming back, right? So this is not goodbye. It's just seeing a little bit. Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be an awesome class. I'm going to teach you all how to interview. Like I said, I did a bunch of really cool celebrity interviews. So if you want to learn how to interview, what questions to ask, what to do, how to prepare, all these really cool questions that I'm sure you have, you can learn from me and I'll teach you how to do an awesome interview. So that'll be really fun. And I hope to see you all there.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. In the meantime, happy holidays, everyone. Good luck finishing up your bunnies. I know a lot of people were commenting too about where they're going to donate them, who they're going to give them to. So it's great to see everyone take up that love of knitting like Shayna taught us to, and to use it to make the world around you a better place. Shayna, we also, chat was moving fast. We did want to point out that there were people from Massachusetts who wanted to make sure
awesome.
you knew that they saw you. So thanks wherever you joined us from. As promised, here's the official handles to tag to make sure you enter the Instagram contest, and we look forward to seeing everybody back here soon. So thanks, everybody.
I'm excited to see you all later. Bye.